And it's welcome back to We Love Ugly Data Deep Analysis podcast. Unbelievably, this is episode 28, or if you're calculating it the other way, series 4, episode 6. I'm here because I'm always here, but this time Dan's here as well. Hi, Dan.
Hey, Matt.
Good to join us back again. That means for people who watch us regularly knows that when Dan's on, we're going to be talking a little bit more about IDP than usual, but more about that in a little bit, because first of all, we have to get on to the standard discussion of the format. And here's a discussion of the format. The format is this: 3 topics and 30 minutes, roughly about 10 minutes per topic. However, on occasions, and today is probably one of those occasions where you might stretch a little bit for one topic and reduce it down for another. But I'm guessing over time, over 28 episodes, which seems a ridiculous number that we've done, that's like over 14 hours. I'm sure that we probably averaged out about that, but I'm not going to go through and count it. That will be a waste of mine and everybody's time. That's the kind of research data that people don't want from analysts. But let's get into some of the research that they do want from analysts. So topic 1, you will know from time to time that we publish lumps of what we refer to still as vendor vignettes, VVs as we refer to them internally. They're now called vendor research updates. Vendor research report. I've even forgotten what the name is. But basically, when we write profiles, we should call them profiles on vendors. We published a big wad of them last time. Now, if you listen to this podcast from time to time, we tend to go through and just to talk about each of them in a single lump. However, there's so many that have come out in this edition that would take more than 10 minutes. So I decided to break it apart. Dan and I are going to discuss some this month. Next month, Alan and I will therefore discuss the rest of it. So if there's one you were waiting for to hear a discussion of and it's not in this month, don't worry, we've not forgotten about it. We will cover it next month. And if you want to get into them all right away, there is a blog post that Alan wrote that's got summaries of them all in there. And as ever, it gives me the opportunity to say any links I talk about will be in the show notes, which are either below where you're reading this right now, depending where you're reading it. If you're listening to it, go to deepanalysis.net and they're there. You don't have to make notes. All of these things will appear. Anyway, let's get into it, Dan. So that's quite a lot of preface for a little bit of content for it. First one I picked up from your research is I think an update, isn't it, on Inferred? But could you maybe for people who don't know them, give a little bit of kind of grounding into who they are before we get into the specific updates from this time around?
Yes, Inferred is an IDP software company, and this is the second report that I've written on them. I think the first came out 3 years ago.
Okay.
Inferred, just by the way, for our listeners, in our IDP market report 2025 that came out a few months ago,
yep,
we named Inferred as the IDP Innovator of the Year last year. So that's a pretty lofty place to be because previous winners include companies like Microsoft or Hyperscience. So it's a nod to what Inferred does with their R&D. One of the things that really got my attention when I talked to the team a couple months ago was they have, I think, 12 patents now, and the CEO's told his development team that he wants to get 100 patents for various technologies that they're coming up with to do intelligent document processing, and now moving into agentic AI coming from where they're at. So it's a very innovative group. We say that a lot because that's what we tend to do here at Deep Analysis.
Yes.
We look for innovation, and it's always difficult to pick somebody that might rise above the crowd. And Inferred really impressed me when they showed what they were doing.
So I take it to impress you, they didn't just show you invoices, did they, Dan?
That's right. Yeah, they did. We also give an award called Best Demo of the Year, and Inferred tied with another company as the top demo. And these two things are related because the innovation was that they have come up with a document AI technology that can dig deep into construction and architectural drawings, which are multi-layered documents with a tremendous amount of data, and connections, context between the layers is very, very important. I have a background in making software for that. It goes back to the AutoCAD days, so I was very interested. It's a very innovative, useful tool to be able to process drawings, even scan drawings, and do things like measure the dimensions of the pipeline underground before you dig. Right, very useful things like that.
If you're I don't know, a quantity surveyor and you're having to sort of estimate materials, this will shorten getting from the drawings to the material volumes.
Yeah, so that's inferred, and that's why we updated their vendor vignette.
The thing we're just for people who speak to us occasionally, if we use the term VV, this is what we mean. This is a VV. So one from the stack that I pulled in, which is not an IDP company, but Evolute IQ, which is a company based in Sweden, but with antecedents in both India and the UK. It's a kind of all-in-one automation platform. And when I say all-in-one, it's not just all-in-one. We do RPA and a little bit. It's everything from proper data management pipelines through MDM, so master data management, which is kind of an important thing at scale when you get into data management, but actually doesn't tend to form the part of most automation platforms. Again, what's interesting about Evolute IQ, and probably one of the reasons why they're probably not a company you're necessarily going to hear a lot about unless you are a big systems integrator, because what Evolute IQ look at doing is going, well, if we can take things that require large transactional loads of automation, and we can take them to whether it's a big BPO or whether it's a big SI and say, well, the thing at the moment you're being paid $1 for and it's costing you 50 cents. Well, we can do it for 30 cents with our technology. And all of these various types of automation, we can handle them all in one platform with a single programming interface, single documentation. So maintaining the people to build it is quicker. So this is almost entirely, I'm sure Evolute IQ would disagree, and there's a lot more to it within the VV itself if you want to read that. But an awful lot of the go-to-market here is about producing a kind of almost like a margin, a marginal platform that allows you to do all the things you're doing already across a host of existing applications, but with different licenses, different costs. And therefore you have to, balance what the transactional value is. We can do it in a single platform. It's designed to be developer friendly. It's designed to onboard developers quickly. So all the things which are an overhead, if you are, a big outsourcer, BPL system integrator doing these projects, Evolute IQ is designed to do that. I realize that's probably not the most exciting technology, but it's real. It has a real benefit, it has a real purpose, it's always good to have more automation platforms, particularly those which have been built from the ground up post transformers, and therefore their use of AI doesn't feel like a bolt-on, but feels like part of how that platform was built from the ground up. Again, a lot more in the VV on that one. Back to you, Dan, with Cambrian, which always looks like it's spelt wrong to me. Maybe can you explain why Cambrian's spelt like that? I know it's not critical, but to my mind as someone, it's not Cambrian as in the Cambrian period of prehistory.
Yes, well, that caught my attention. This is a startup out of Germany. I think it was about 3 years ago when I was looking at the explosion of IDP software company startups. Since the Transformer paper came out in 2017 from Google, which is what LLMs are based on. I called that the Cambrian explosion of software companies, where suddenly in 2018 to 2019, all these new species appeared, right? And when I saw the name of the company, first thing I asked the founders was, well, where did you get the name from? And they got it from the Cambrian explosion. So that earned them a VV. By the way, if you're a software company out there and you're listening to this and you think, oh, I'm just going to brief these guys and get a vendor analysis report done. Well, sorry, this is still sort of we're picky about who we decide we're going to write about. So Cambrian, why did they impress me? This is a true fourth wave IDP startup. They are doing document processing using vision language models, zero-shot learning with LLMs, and they got a little bit of machine learning in there, but they have staked their success on the efficacy of LLMs and VLMs to handle document processing. So they just raised, I think, a small round. So they got a little bit of money to give them a runway and see what they can do. They're located in Germany. So first is they're going after their market there. Government market really needs this. And also a lot of folks don't know, but Germany has a healthcare insurance market that has some of the same problems that we see in the USA and other markets like that. So yeah, a startup, a good plan, and I think they've got some potential.
So listening to some of the characteristics you talked about Cambrian and the German market, if you're listening to that, hold that in your mind. It's going to come back in a few minutes. We may mention this again if we follow the path I intended to go through this. But that's kind of interesting. So just while we're here, what does a new IDP vendor need to do to impress you to get one, to get a briefing, and two, to get onto your list of VVs then, Dan?
Well, I think I did not bury the lead, did I? If anybody was actually listening when I talked about inferred,
yeah,
you brought it up. If you want to demo an invoice as your first and main thing you're doing, then I'll go, oh, that's nice, because invoices is still a problem and there's a lot of opportunity out there. However, I'd say 95% of the IDP vendors lead with an invoice. So be prepared to have a tremendous amount of competition. But if you come to me and you're showing me something new, this is all about documents, people. I always have to remind anybody I'm talking to, this is not about AI. This is about documents. And there's so many different document types that still need help to automate out there. And I'm always interested when somebody brings something like the construction documents that Inferred brought. Cambrian showed me different types of documents, not invoices, first and foremost. So yeah, there's a tip for you if you want to be in a VV, but now that means all my briefings are going to be people trying to compete for the weirdest document type, which may be a good thing now. Well,
I mean, weird isn't necessarily what we're looking for, but sometimes weird makes you stand out. But we don't want to make this a weird document competition. A well thought out set of documents or different document types that, and particularly, I guess, verticalized ones are kind of interesting. And you mentioned that the construction ones there. We've seen other things around construction specifically, actually, and automation. So where those have actually been, companies have been very successful just focusing on that as an example. Just up on screen for people who are watching, and I'll describe it for people who aren't. If you do go to deepanalysis.net and follow the URL that still says vendor vignettes, you can actually browse through there's 3 figures, I think, now of VVs which are up there. If you're a Deep Analysis customer, you can just read them all, memorize them all, be tested on them all like it's a quiz. But they all go up there first, and you can see some of those on screen. That we're part of this batch, so that we'll come to when Alan and I have a discussion this time next month. So on to topic 2. This is kind of our sneak peek. We're actually talking about some research here, which at the time of recording, Wednesday, the 18th of June, this isn't actually out yet. So we're kind of giving you a sneak peek. Some of our clients have already seen little bits of this over the last few weeks. No one's seen all of this, and we can't give you all of this today, but it's going to be available for download soon. And when that's available, we'll put the links into this. And frankly, if you follow us on LinkedIn or look at our website, you will not be able to avoid the fact that this research is out, because it's really interesting stuff. Dan, the topic says new IDP research. There's a bit more to it than that. Do you want to just preface what the purpose of the study is, what you hope to get out of it, to kind of baseline everybody about the survey itself?
Yes, this survey was commissioned by AIM International, the document management organization, pretty well known in our circles. And then it was sponsored by some people who make solutions for this. And the goal was to take a deep dive into the use of intelligent document processing at companies in the United States and what's traditionally called the DACH region, which is Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. And we were very careful to qualify companies up front. So I think there's no companies under 10 million in revenue, and I believe the number of employees have to be over 500. So this is not a small company. We got quite a few very large companies as well, hundreds of them. In fact, the total universe of respondents that completed the survey was 600, making it one of the largest that I am aware of. And I've been in this industry for dog years, Matt. And that is a large number, 600 highly qualified end users. The end users were mostly out of IT, because guess what? That's where the IDP solution tends to sit. And we also had a nice cohort, though, from different business units, with finance leading the way. So that's sort of a level set. The survey
let's get into some of the highlights. And what we've got up on screen for people watching are basically three sort of pools of highlights that I asked Dan to pick out his current favorites. This is not all of the findings. This is a selection of the findings. But I thought it'd be good to pick out sort of your top three. Let's start with the first one, which says 78% are operational with AI. Now, this is something that we ask in actually all of our recent surveys over the last year, to ask organizations to self-identify where they feel they are within a kind of stratified descriptions of AI adoption. So talk to me a little bit about why these companies, these IDP-focused companies, are with AI, Dan.
Well, I think that's a very high finding in terms of the percentage, as Matt said. But there's a reason for that. Document automation is probably the lowest of low-hanging fruit on the AI tree.
Right.
And it doesn't get much press out there. But document automation, if you want to get a project from proof of concept to deployment and show some return on investment pretty quickly, this is the place to go, because we've been using AI in IDP products for 20 years. And with LLMs, it's just sort of added to the efficacy. We can do some things better and faster now, right? So document processing, intelligent is AI. That's the I in IDP. So it's not a surprise that this cohort is fairly good at doing this and have moved ahead very quickly with the latest technologies like LLMs and VLMs.
So 78% operational with AI, 47% identified they've adopted AI into many daily functions. So it's that actually probably that statistic gives you a little bit more reinforcement here, because nearly half of people are saying actually we've got daily functions where AI forms some part of it. Now I know that people who've spoken to me recently know I'm kind of hung up a little bit on adoption stats this year, and I'm kind of interested in that, because ultimately that determines whether this stuff is useful or not, whether it's used. And I think that's that kind of gives us an interesting indication there. Let's go
Yeah,
into the one that's probably only controversial if you've not looked at it, and only controversial if you've not thought about it, which is the use of paper. And the stat we've got up there is that 61% of the surveyed organizations still process paper documents. Talk to me about this now, because it didn't surprise us, but so far when we've talked about the people, it always surprises other people. Why is that?
Well, you can't get rid of paper in certain workflows. This is just more proof of that. If we break that statistic down, Matt, what was even more shocking, because that was steady state. What are you doing now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
48% expect it's going to increase.
Whoa. Now
that to me was the light bulb going off, saying, okay, let's look a little deeper into that. Now just to be honest with everybody here, I don't have to look any deeper, okay, because I come out of this industry. I made products. I worked with companies that scanned large amounts of paper, and my software would process that. What I think is happening here is this might be illusory. In other words, paper may not be increasing out there, but because the AI has gotten so good at processing images, scanned images, it's possible, Matt, that what's happening is, and also there's a push to get old data to train an LLM.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think that those two factors may be causing a bit of a swell, if you will, in the tide, and the demand to get that information scanned and digitized and get the data extracted may just be rising right now. So it may not be that there's going to be more paper and documents. It just may be that now companies are finding out that it costs less to actually go and extract that information, and they got a very good reason to do it now.
Well, interesting enough, as you said, the prime mover behind this survey with us was AIM. We did a survey last year with AIM, which is the MMI on AI and unstructured data, and in that, when we asked people what percentage of your organization's overall processes are still currently paper-based, so contains paper as part of it, and the response for that was 45%. So we already had some research data that was pointing to the fact that paper was still quite commonly used. But let's talk about a specific type of paper. Let's talk about faxes, because we've got 37% here still process faxed documents. Now, if you work in any industry outside healthcare, that's likely to shock you. If you work inside healthcare, that will not shock you, I'm guessing.
Well, I've got a spoiler alert for you here, Matt.
Oh, right. Okay.
We broke it down by industry responses. And actually, the leader in faxes was not healthcare. It was government.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Well, there you go. You see, and I've worked in government, but not for a while, and certainly we didn't do a lot of faxes in the bit I worked at.
Well, the UK is different. The UK is a bit more advanced, but leading the way was the USA government, and surprising to me was the German government showed very strong use. Those were the two cohorts that led this. The USA healthcare system was also one of the top, and that's the one we all know about. Because the NHS is trying to get rid of fax machines and stamp it out completely, and they're about 90% of their way there. But in the US, it's just it's hopeless. But now let's say a nice thing. Let's say something nice, Matt, about the fax, because fax gets this sort of eye roll, right? The fax is a secure way to send documentation between two different places that don't share IT systems and have difficulty exchanging information. And that's one of the reasons why doctors and healthcare facilities in the U.S. still use it for data privacy, and also to make sure it actually gets to the other doctor in time. So let's say
for all the use of electronic health records, fax is the exchange protocol between them, between healthcare providers, insurers. Fax is the exchange protocol. in the US for that. So that kind of explains it. It's electronic on either end, and then when you transfer it from one to the other, it becomes paper because there is no exchange format otherwise, which is kind of an interesting characteristic of that market. Let's get on to the last one, which of course kind of speaks to me because it says 53% say process redesign is the AI skill most lacking, and I'm a broken record about process design.
Yeah, exactly, Matt. So that was another surprise to me because usually we hear about tech skills being the deficit.
Yeah.
And tech skills did rate high, by the way, in this particular question. But that's because if you put tech skills in a list, and 70% of your respondents are in IT, they're going to check that. Okay, it's just going to happen. But this surprised me. Process redesign, 53%, but followed very closely by change management.
Yeah, of course. They're like another hobby horse of mine.
Yeah. So that tells me that IDP has moved out of this. It used to be sort of this back office enclave, right, where you ran that operation, and then it was like a black box, and out of it came purified, validated data for the rest of the organization to consume. And don't ask how you make the sausage used to be the thing we'd say about IDP. But it's moved now, and it's part of the sort of warp and weave of process automation. We've seen this with companies like UiPath and Automation Anywhere, and Appian just briefed us recently. They have document AI baked into their process automation, which means it says that you're going to have to sit down and consider your processes and your workflows, not just, and this is what I like to say now, are you doing digital transformation or mere digitization? There's a huge difference. Digitization is just taking a process that started in 1972 when Xerox machines became popular, and it's the same workflow based on paper documents and just digitizing it. There's a lot of that happening today instead of sitting down and saying, how do we redesign this process from the start?
And if you're interested in that, if you're interested in process redesign and all the tools around it, our work intelligence research practice has got lots of data on that. So a kind of interesting conclusion from that was actually what we've got now is the data that says IDP is now a core element within the bigger business processes, the core business processes that run organizations, rather than being a little backwater, which is great for that market that you actually have some real data. And that's the fun thing about doing this research, Dan, isn't it? Is that when you don't presuppose what this stuff's going to come out, it doesn't matter because you know the data is going to produce really interesting stories. And I think this survey, when the whole thing comes out, is packed full of these. Yeah,
it is. The survey should be published by AIM in July for those who are waiting with bated breath.
Cool. Well, again, we will probably cover it when it comes out. We've got some other bits and pieces that are coming out as well. So keep them peeled for that, and we'll talk about that in more detail. Maybe we'll even come back and pull out some of the lesser studied topics next time you're on, Dan, because I know from the ones that I've been more primarily involved in, that there's a long tail of stuff inside that doesn't necessarily get pulled out,
there is.
Until a little bit later on. Dozens and dozens and dozens of little stories. So, final topic of the day. Not last month, but the month before, which would have been April. Alan and I were talking about the banned words list game. Let me just refresh what the banned word list game is. Sometimes we hear people use cliche words and we don't really want to hear them anymore. They're cliched in writing and they're cliched in speech. And we kind of want to say, you know what, let's put them on the wall and never use them. In return for doing that, we know we are as guilty of doing that as anybody else. So in exchange for taking a word out of circulation that other people use, we will take one of our own cliches and take that out of circulation. That's how this game works. And penance, if we use the term that we said we wouldn't use, we will then have to say it in every podcast and write it in every blog post for the remains of the year as penance for doing it. So it's a silly game, but I think actually it's just useful.
Sorry, folks. Yeah, Matt made up these rules just so everybody knows.
That's fine. One of the advantages of always being here is I get to define the rules of the game. So far, last time, Alan made a good case for why he doesn't want to hear the word hype. Sorry, why he doesn't want to hear out of the box anymore. I didn't want to hear seamlessly integrated, or frankly, deeply integrated, or any qualifier for integrated anymore. But I said seamlessly because I had to pick one, and that was the one I picked. Alan said he would not use hype anymore. This is a lie. He's still saying it, but I haven't got it in writing yet, to better trap him. I said I wouldn't use faster horses anymore. I don't think I have, because it's a bit clunkier to say. But anyway, here are Dan's suggestions. Dan, you don't want to hear game changer anymore. What's game changer done to you?
Well, you know, Matt, at the end of the day, game changer really winds me up.
Yeah.
So I told a story. I was at Hyperscience headquarters in New York last week, and talking to some end users that are really deep into document processing and AI. And somebody asked me, so what's your background? What's your history? And you know me, Matt, that's a dangerous question to ask.
Well, so, yeah. Sit back, everybody, and listen to Dan's war stories when he gets his medals out.
An hour later, yes. So I started with the story about my first job in tech was to sell the Kurzweil OCR machine. And it was a big drum-based thing that sat on a big table. And it took 5 minutes to scan one, very nicely dot matrix printed page. And it turned that into text on your computer screen. And I remember when it came out that we called it a game changer. And we thought that it was going to eliminate office jobs, just, en masse. Knowledge workers were going to lose jobs all over the world at high rates because of this new technology. I think we sold 5 of those, Matt, before we all realized.
Well, I hope they were very expensive, Dan.
They were $5,000 back then.
Wow.
In 1989, $5,000, which is probably the other reason we didn't sell much. The technology wasn't ready to change any games, let alone even get on the bench to sit.
Well, bear in mind, we've just been talking about paper and how much paper there is around. You could argue that the game never really truly changes. The players might change, but the game remains the same.
Yeah, it's just, again, it's one of those, it's become very, very popular in the AI influencer world on LinkedIn. It might be possibly the #1 cliche, because it's easy, it's lazy, it's a game changer. Okay, fine. But it's actually, the problem is, like most of these cliches, if somebody says game changer, I immediately reflexively, with my cynical analyst hat, go, it probably isn't, right? Yeah.
Oh, maybe there's a certain amount of industry analyst arrogance that goes, hey, if anybody's going to declare it a game changer, that's my job, not yours. So at the end, tell me, at the end, I always think at the end of the day is a very much of a UK English cliche. Is it, or is it as much of a cliche in US English?
Oh, it's huge. In the USA, I had a CEO boss in 1995 that was using it quite a bit, and it's still around. It still gets I use it, so that's the one I said I would ban from my vocabulary.
Cool. Well, it's at the end of the podcast, or at the end of the day, because it's morning time. We're recording this in the UK, which is why we're both bathed with sunlight at this time of the day. But that's it. Part 2 of the banned words list. It may reappear. What I will do is I do with these things, and I will wrap them up into our blog post so we can have the full list. And if you want to go back and listen to the previous ones, Alan and I ranting about our ones, they were in the April podcast, and I'll put links in the show notes.
Yeah, Matt, just to put it, kind of wrap up the whole banned words list thing here. I think it's really appropriate that somebody like you from the land of George Orwell is actually taking charge of the banned words list. Well done. Absolutely. Yeah. Someone has to reinforce some standards here, and apparently that's just going to be me, because unlike the heavy bureaucracy that's suggested within 1984, I've just decided I'm going to do this. I've decided it's going to be my job. Right, that's it from us this time. Next time,
3 more topics, 30-ish minutes to discuss them in. Thanks for joining us, Dan.
Thank you, Matt. Always a pleasure to hang out.
Perfect. Thank you. And thank you again for listening, downloading, and continuing to bear with our opinions. And we'll see you next time. Thank you again.
Bye.